Mark, my boyfriend of 10 years, was the definition of perfect, almost, handsome, successful. The only real flaw was his constant need to tear me down. If I got second place instead of first, he'd call me not smart enough. When I finally earned some money from my writing, he'd dismiss it as worthless drivel. Then, in the bridal shop, when Mark criticized my figure, saying I didn't look anything like a bride in the dress, I finally snapped. For the first time, I screamed at him, "If you think I'm so awful, then don't marry me." In the bridal shop, the moment I stepped out of the dressing room, even strangers gasped. The saleswoman smiled. "Jennifer, you look stunning. The dress was made for you. Your fiancé is going to be blown away, honey," she continued. "We'll see about that," I replied. "He has pretty high standards." After all, we'd been together for a decade, and Mark had always been critical, never offering a single word of praise. But today, looking in the mirror, I saw a slender waist, fair skin, a vision that perfectly complemented the gown. Maybe Mark would finally be impressed? Would he compliment me? Think I was beautiful? Be speechless, like the other guys in the shop? Filled with hope, I nervously tugged at Mark's sleeve. But my expectations were crushed in an instant. Mark turned, looked me up and down, and the first thing he said was, "Jen, you're still too heavy." My smile froze. Even the saleswoman seemed uncomfortable. "Your face is puffy, arms are thick, you have wide shoulders and a stocky waist. It doesn't look good." Mark sighed. "Honestly, you don't look like a bride at all." His voice wasn't loud, but everyone in the shop could hear him. All sorts of glances landed on me. Pitying, mocking, amused. In that moment, I felt like an object being scrutinized, not a person. Tears welled up, my chest tightened. I'd been working out every day, just like Mark wanted, just to fit into this dress. For 3 months, I'd barely eaten, lost 20 pounds, all to look my best on our wedding day. Why was he doing this? Whatever it was, after 10 years, I'd had enough. I ripped off the veil and screamed at him. "If you think I'm not good enough, then don't marry me." That's right, I don't look like a bride, so the wedding's off. With Mark staring in shock, I took a deep breath and finally said the words that had been swirling in my mind for so long. "Mark, we're done. I'm breaking up with you." My best friend, Ashley, picked me up, and I still couldn't stop crying. The news that the wedding was off spread like wildfire on social media, and everyone was asking what happened. The most common comment was, "Jennifer, are you sure you and Mark haven't just had a misunderstanding? He's such a great guy, you won't find another one like him." Even my mom sided with Mark. I talked to Mark. He said it was just a little thing, "Honey, don't let it get to you." And Mark sent me 3 words. "Don't be silly." Clutching my phone, I felt a wave of helplessness wash over me. No one understood. To everyone else, Mark was the perfect boyfriend. Handsome, successful, made good money, and hadn't cheated on me in 10 years. His only flaw was his habit of putting me down. We'd been childhood friends, practically raised together. He was the golden boy, always excelling. But fate was cruel. He had a bad family. His mom died early, and his dad was a workaholic who barely paid him any attention except when he won an award. As a result, Mark matured quickly. While the other kids were playing in the mud, Mark was competing in math contests and winning. His unhappy family life turned him cold. I was the only one he let his guard down with and showed his sharp tongue. If I got second place, he'd knock me on the head and say I was not smart enough. He'd point at my mistakes and scold me for getting such easy questions wrong. All through my childhood, my mom would always say, "Look at Mark. Always getting top marks, winning everything." I grew up in Mark's shadow. I hated the way he put me down and my mom's constant comparisons. But during our awkward teenage years, people called us frenemies. They said that Mark treated me that way because he liked me. Even when Mark confessed, he said, "Jennifer, if I didn't care, why would I push you so hard?" It was the first time he'd spoken to me so gently, his eyes full of smiles. The others encouraged us, so I brushed my worries away. And so, I ended up dating Mark. 10 years flew by. Ashley was my best friend from college, and the only one who supported my decision to break up. Once in college, Mark and I were supposed to study together at the library. Getting up at 7 on the weekend wasn't easy, and even though I rushed, I was still 2 minutes late. Mark crossed his arms and frowned. "Jennifer, can't you be on time for once? What if you had an important meeting? A multi-million-dollar deal?" I started to apologize, but Ashley pulled me behind her. "Getting up early on the weekend to study with you is inhuman. Jen did great just showing up. And she was 2 minutes late, sheesh. Get over it." From that moment on, Mark and Ashley didn't get along. Ashley loved praising me. If I got the second highest GPA, she'd say something. If I passed my exams, she'd celebrate. She'd tell me good job. When I got up early, she'd say, "Don't listen to Mark, girl, you're awesome." It was the kind of encouragement I had never gotten. I loved being around Ashley, but Mark sneered at it. "She only says that to make you conceited so you don't see your flaws. Being humble is how you see your flaws. Being direct is how I help you." When talking about Ashley, Mark would frown slightly. I knew that's how he acted when he was upset. I knew I'd be scolded. I wanted to tell him she wasn't like that. But I was afraid. I didn't dare. I was too scared of Mark's anger and his criticisms. When Ashley heard about this, she just sighed. Being controlled is hard to get out of. Just take it slow. So, Ashley was thrilled when she heard I had decided to break up with Mark. She hugged me and whispered, "Congrats, Jen, you're finally free." Ashley took me to her place and let me stay in the spare room. She led me inside, eyes sparkling. "Do you like the room? I decorated it just the way you like it." I stared at the pink wallpaper, the Mickey Mouse desk, and a Raggedy Ann doll. I felt like I was in a fog. Since living with Mark, how long had it been since I'd seen things like this? Mark was a minimalist. Everything was black, white, and gray. He'd scoff at my love of pink and dolls, saying, "Jennifer, you have such bad taste." My eyes started to water again. I hugged Ashley and cried. If Mark was a nightmare, then Ashley was a gift from heaven. I went to our house to get my stuff. But when I got there, Mark was home. He sat on the couch and lazily looked at me. "Had enough? Are you back?" I tried not to let my voice shake. "I'm serious. I'm breaking up with you. I came to get my stuff." Surprisingly, Mark didn't say anything. He just sat there, legs crossed, hands clasped, watching me with a half smile. I ignored it and started packing. I didn't have much. A few personal items. Mark had bought most of the stuff in the house. When we moved in together, he wrinkled his nose at my colorful toothbrush and towel. "Jennifer, your stuff looks so ugly," he said. The next day, he threw it all away. I complained, but he said, "Your stuff is too tacky." I threw it out. That's when I first wanted to break up. Why did personal taste have to be better than others? But my mom told me, "You should just listen to him. You've been together for so long, Han. Don't break up over something so small." The only thing I liked about this place was my writing corner. A desk, a lamp, a computer, where I created so much. I'd always loved writing, but Mark told me to get a real job. But when I went to college, I started writing again, and Mark was my first reader. I hoped that he would like my work, but he just said, "Your writing is terrible, it's worthless. You're not good at writing, just give up." But I loved writing, so for the first time, I didn't listen. I kept writing and I got good. When I got my first payment, I showed it off to Mark. My writing got me money. $300. I wanted to show him that people read my writing, and that they even paid for it. I wanted to show him that I wasn't as bad as he said I was. What was Mark's reaction? He quickly skimmed it, then said, "Worthless garbage." He looked down at me, his eyes full of ridicule. "People are just being nice and trying to encourage you. Do you really think you're a good writer?" His words broke my heart. After that, I didn't tell Mark about how much money I made. I took a deep breath and went to put my computer away, but it was already turned on. When I turned on the screen, all my files were gone. 100,000 words were gone. Mark appeared behind me, watching me with dark eyes. "I deleted your writing. It's a waste of time. You think you can leave me because of that?" I froze, staring at the screen. Mark kept talking. "You think you're good just because you write? Jennifer, I'm helping you. You can't even take my criticism. You are too heavy. I'm just pointing it out. Why are you upset? I'm helping you." I still started shaking and crying. "Can't you ever say something good about me?" The silence in the room stretched until it felt as brittle as dry glass. Mark stood behind me, his hands resting casually in his pockets, his lips curved into that familiar, pitying smirk he always wore whenever he thought he was delivering a tough lesson. "I didn't delete it out of malice, Jen," he said smoothly, his tone lowering into that measured, fatherly cadence he used whenever he wanted to make me feel small. "I deleted it because you were embarrassing yourself. You were spending hours staring at a screen, convincing yourself you were an author, when all you were doing was producing cheap emotional drivel. I'm saving you from future failure. The world isn't as nice as Ashley, Jen. Out there, people will laugh at you." He stepped closer, reaching out to pat my shoulder. It was a gesture meant to soothe a child, not comfort a woman. "You're 30 years old," he whispered. "You don't have the discipline for real literature. Leave the ambition to people who can handle it. Come back home. I'll even pretend this whole bridal shop scene never happened." I stared at the empty folder on my laptop screen. My hands were trembling, but for the first time in 10 years, it wasn't from fear or shame. It was from the sudden, icy clarity that washed over me. Mark thought he had erased 6 months of my life with 2 clicks of a mouse. What he didn't know, what he had never bothered to ask because he never listened, was that I wasn't the naive 18-year-old girl who kept her diary in an unlocked drawer anymore. 2 years ago, after he threw away my favorite sketchbook because the cover was too cluttered, I had bought a cloud subscription under a private email address he knew nothing about. Every single chapter, every revision, every character note was automatically backed up to a secure server the moment I typed a period. He hadn't destroyed my book. He had only destroyed his own disguise. I slowly closed the laptop, slid it into my canvas tote bag and stood up. Mark's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a subtle crease between his brows. He didn't like that I hadn't burst into tears. He didn't like that I wasn't dropping to my knees to salvage the fragments of my work. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice tightening. "I'm leaving, Mark," I said. My voice didn't shake. It was quiet, flat, and entirely devoid of the warmth I had spent a decade pouring into his empty hands. "Jen, don't be childish," he snapped, taking a sharp step forward to block the hallway. "You're reacting emotionally again. This is exactly what I mean when I say you aren't mature enough for the real world. You throw a tantrum the moment someone gives you constructive criticism." "Deleting my work isn't criticism, Mark," I said, looking him dead in the eyes. "It's control." He let out a short, scoffing laugh. "Control? I've spent 10 years building you up. Where would you be without me? Who else would put up with your bad posture, your lack of drive, your absurd, messy taste? You think another man is going to look at you and see a prize? I took you in when you were nothing, Jennifer." I looked at him, really looked at him. I looked at the perfectly ironed gray shirt, the sterile, unblemished line of his jaw, the dark, empty eyes that had spent 10 years searching for every small flaw in my body and soul just so he could feel like a king standing over a ruin. "You didn't build me up, Mark," I said, stepping right past him, my shoulder brushing his without flinching. "You just tried to chop me down until I was small enough to fit in your pocket. If you walk out that door, Jennifer, don't bother coming back," he shouted. Behind me, his voice finally losing its practiced, icy calm, rising into an ugly shrill bark. "You'll be crawling back in a week. You can't even pick a decent pair of shoes without my approval." I didn't turn around. I pulled the heavy oak door shut behind me, the sharp click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the quiet hallway. Ashley was waiting downstairs in her old yellow hatchback, the engine idling near the curb. The moment I climbed into the passenger seat and pulled the door shut, she turned to me, her eyes wide with anxiety. "Are you okay?" she asked, her hands gripping the steering wheel tight. "Did he say something awful?" "He deleted the local files on my laptop," I said, staring out the windshield at the gray brick facade of the building I used to call home. Ashley gasped, her knuckles turning white. "He what?" "He thought he deleted my entire book," I continued, a faint, cold smile touching my lips. "He thought if he took away my writing, I'd have nothing left, and I'd be forced to stay." Ashley reached out and pulled me into a fierce, suffocating hug. "That sick, arrogant bastard," she breathed into my hair. "You saved it on the cloud, right? Tell me you saved it." "Every word," I whispered into her shoulder. "It's all safe." Ashley pulled back, her eyes shining with fierce, defiant tears. "Then let's go home, Jing. We're going to celebrate." That night, in Ashley's pink, messy, wonderful spare room, I logged into my publisher's portal. I uploaded the final, polished manuscript of my novel. A story about a woman who breaks free from a gilded cage built by a man who claimed to love her. My editor, Clara, called me 20 minutes later. "Jennifer, I just skimmed the final 3 chapters," Clara said, her voice crackling with genuine excitement through the speaker. "The emotional shift in the protagonist, it's breathtaking. It's raw, it's furious, and it feels completely real. We're locking in the spring release date." "Thank you, Clara," I said, pulling the Raggedy Ann doll into my lap. "Thank you for believing in it." "I don't just believe in it, Jen," Clara replied warmly. "I know talent when I see it. You're going to surprise a lot of people." After hanging up, I lay back on the soft mattress, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars Ashley had stuck to the ceiling years ago. For the first time in 10 years, my chest didn't feel tight. I didn't have to replay every conversation in my head to check if I had sounded stupid. I didn't have to worry if my posture was straight enough or if my waist was thin enough. I was just me. The peace, however, was short-lived. At 8 o'clock the following evening, my phone rang. The screen displayed my mother's name. I hesitated before picking up. "Mom. Jennifer. Where on earth are you?" My mother's frantic voice boomed through the speaker. "Mark called me last night. He was practically in tears, Jen. Said you walked out after a minor disagreement, and that you're staying with that awful Ashley girl." I closed my eyes, taking a slow, steady breath. "It wasn't a minor disagreement, Mom. We broke up. The wedding is off." "Nonsense," my mother barked. "You're 30 years old. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find a man like Mark? He has a senior director position at 32. He owns his apartment outright. He comes from a good background. He doesn't drink, he doesn't gamble. He spent 10 years telling me I was fat, stupid, and worthless." I interrupted, my voice dropping into a low, firm register. "He deleted my manuscript yesterday because he couldn't handle me having something of my own." He was just trying to help you focus on what matters. My mother snapped, completely ignoring my words. Writing stories isn't a career, Jennifer. Mark knows how the world works. He's just trying to keep your feet on the ground. I've set up a dinner for us tonight at the Jade Garden. Mark is going to be there. You are going to apologize, and we are going to fix this nonsense before the invitations go out. I'm not coming to dinner, Mom. Jennifer rose, she yelled. If you don't show up tonight, don't bother coming home for the holidays. I didn't raise an ungrateful daughter who throws away a good man over a little constructive advice. The line went dead. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the silent phone in my hand. Ashley stepped into the doorway, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She had heard every word. You don't have to go, Ashley said softly, setting a mug on the nightstand. I looked at the steam rising from the chocolate. For 28 years I had spent my life seeking my mother's approval, competing with the ghost of Mark's perfection. Every grade I brought home was compared to Mark's. Every achievement was dwarfed by Mark's. My mother had traded my self-worth for the pride of having a golden boy son-in-law. No, I said, standing up and pulling a bright yellow dress from the closet. A dress Mark had once called garish and cheap. I'm going, I told Ashley, my lips curling into a sharp, decisive line. It's time to put an end to this dinner once and for all. The Jade Garden was an upscale, traditional restaurant filled with dark mahogany, wood silk lanterns, and the quiet clinking of expensive porcelain. When I walked into the private dining room, my mother and Mark were already seated. Mark was wearing a tailored navy suit, looking impeccably groomed, sitting beside a massive velvet jewelry box placed ostentatiously in the center of the Lazy Susan. My mother was beaming at him, pouring him tea with a motherly fondness she had never once directed at me. When the door clicked open, both of them turned. Mark's eyes swept over my yellow dress, his brows knitting together in that familiar, instinctual scowl of disapproval. But before he could speak, he forced a soft, long-suffering sigh onto his face. Jen, Mark said, standing up and smoothing his jacket. You're late. But I'm glad you decided to be sensible. My mother jumped up, pulling me by the arm toward the chair beside Mark. Look at you dressed in that bright thing. Never mind that. Mark has been so patient. Jennifer, he's been telling me how much he misses you. I didn't sit down. I stood behind the chair, my hands resting lightly on the carved wooden back. I didn't come here to be sensible, Mom, I said, my voice calm and even. I came to tell you to stop calling me. Mark let out a small, indulgent laugh, picking up the velvet box and popping it open. Inside lay a diamond necklace, slender, delicate, and expensive. Jen, stop playing games, Mark said, taking a step toward me with the box extended. I know you were hurt by my honesty in the bridal shop. I admit maybe my phrasing was a bit too direct. But you know I only say these things because I want you to be the best version of yourself. I bought this to show you I'm willing to compromise. He held the necklace up, his eyes shining with cold, triumphant certainty. He thought a shiny trinket would buy back 10 years of humiliation. Put it on, my mother urged frantically, nudging my elbow. Look how generous he is, Jen. A real diamond. Say thank you. I looked at the necklace, then at Mark's face. Do you know what you said to me in that shop, Mark? I asked softly. Mark frowned, his patience visibly wearing thin. I said the dress didn't flatter your proportions. It was a factual observation. You told me I had wide shoulders, thick arms, a stocky waist, and a puffy face, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the quiet room. You told me I didn't look like a bride in front of 6 strangers. My mother shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between us. Well, Mark is just observant, honey. You have been looking a little tired lately. Mom. I turned my head, looking directly at my mother. When I was 12 years old, I got 2nd place in the state spelling bee. I brought the trophy home, proud and crying tears of joy. Do you remember what you said to me? My mother blinked, startled. What? That was 20 years ago. You looked at the trophy, then you looked at Mark's 1st place physics plaque, and you said, why couldn't you be more like Mark? I continued, my voice steady, unyielding. For 20 years you fed me to him. You taught me that his insults were guidance, and his arrogance was excellence. You let him crush my confidence so you could boast to the neighbors that your daughter was marrying a golden boy. Jennifer, my mother gasped, her face flushing bright red with shame and anger. How dare you speak to me like that? And you, Mark? I turned back to the man standing before me. I picked up the velvet box from his hand. Mark's lips curved into a tiny, smug smirk, expecting me to yield. I flipped the velvet box upside down over the hot bowl of seafood soup sitting in the center of the table. Plop! The diamond necklace sank into the thick, steaming broth with a wet splash. Mark's face went instantly pale. Are you out of your mind? Keep your diamond, Mark, I said, pulling my phone from my bag and tapping the screen. I laid it on the table. It was playing an audio recording, a recording of Mark's voice from 2 nights ago in his apartment. I deleted your writing. It's a waste of time. You think you can leave me? Because of that? You think you're good just because you write? Jennifer, I'm helping you. The recording played clearly through the quiet room. My mother's jaw dropped. She looked at the phone, then slowly turned her head to look at Mark, her eyes wide with genuine shock. Even in her desperate desire for social status, hearing a man calmly brag about destroying her daughter's hard work was a pill too bitter to swallow. Mark, my mother whispered, her voice finally losing its sharp edge. Did you really do that? Mark stood frozen, his handsome face twisting into a hideous, ugly mask of fury. The polished, aristocratic golden boy was gone, replaced by a bitter, vindictive coward whose control had been utterly shattered. So what if I did? Mark snarled, dropping all pretense, glaring at me with raw hatred. She's talentless. She's mediocre. Without me, she's nothing. She'll be crawling back to me in a month when she realizes no one else wants a 30-year-old wash-up. I looked at him, feeling a sudden, overwhelming wave of pity, not for myself but for him. I used to think you were a giant, Mark, I said softly, slinging my bag over my shoulder. But now I see you're just a tiny, terrified boy who has to keep everyone around him in the dirt just so he can feel tall. I turned around, walked out of the jade garden, and left them both sitting in the quiet room with the cooling soup and the drowned diamond. 3 months passed like a dream. Spring turned into summer, and my life transformed in ways I had never dared to imagine during those 10 gray years. My novel, titled Unraveling, was published in May, thanks to Clara's brilliant marketing strategy and a glowing review from a major national literary critic who called it a fierce, terrifyingly accurate dissection of psychological control. The book blew up. Within 3 weeks it hit the regional bestseller list. I used my advance check to pay off my share of Ashley's apartment rent for the entire year, bought myself a professional ergonomic writing desk, and filled my room with bright yellow sunflowers, pink linens, and plush dolls. My world was no longer black, white, and gray. It was vibrant, noisy, and mine. One afternoon, while I was doing an author signing at a local independent bookstore, I saw a familiar figure standing near the back of the line. It was my mother. She looked older, her shoulders slightly hunched, holding a hardback copy of my book in her trembling hands. When it was her turn at the table, she didn't look me in the eye. She quietly slid the book across the linen tablecloth. Jen, she whispered, her voice crackling. I read it. I read the whole thing in one night. I paused my pen, looking up at her. I didn't know, my mother choked out, tears pooling in her wrinkled eyes. I didn't realize. I thought I was pushing you to be successful. I thought Mark was protecting you. I was so blind, Jen. I'm so sorry. I looked at the woman who had spent 2 decades comparing me to a golden boy. The anger I had held for so long didn't flare up. It simply dissolved into a soft, quiet peace. I signed the title page in neat, fluid cursive to Mom. May we both learn to see clearly. I slid the book back to her. Thank you for coming, Mom. She clutched the book to her chest, wept silently, and bowed her head before walking out into the afternoon sun. While my life was blooming, Mark's world was slowly, spectacularly coming apart at the seams. Ashley brought home the gossip from her corporate network a week later over takeout. Mark lost the senior partner promotion, Ashley declared, popping a dumpling into her mouth with a triumphant grin. Apparently, without you at home to absorb his toxic outbursts, he started taking his constructive criticism out on his junior analysts at the firm. What happened? I asked, setting my tea down. He publicly humiliated a junior associate during a client presentation, telling her work was worthless garbage in front of a $15 million account holder. Ashley laughed. The client was so disgusted by his arrogance that they pulled their contract on the spot. The managing board demoted him to a background research role yesterday. I shook my head slowly. Mark had spent 10 years convincing himself that his cruelty was honesty and that his put-downs were help. He had truly believed that the world would tolerate his toxic behavior the same way a terrified, loving girlfriend had. He had forgotten that outside our apartment, people didn't owe him their patience. The final chapter of my past arrived on a rainy Tuesday evening in July. I was leaving the grand auditorium of the City Cultural Center after giving a panel talk on women's contemporary fiction. I was dressed in an elegant, tailored emerald silk suit, my hair styled in soft waves, holding a bouquet of white lilies given to me by a reader. As I stepped out onto the sheltered marble porch waiting for Ashley to pull the car around, a man stepped out from behind a stone pillar. I almost didn't recognize him. Mark looked terrible. His navy suit was unpressed, his tie slightly crooked, his posture slouched. The sharp, arrogant gleam in his eyes was gone, replaced by a hollow, desperate, bloodshot gaze. He had lost weight, making his cheekbones look sharp and skeletal. He stood 5 feet away, clutching an umbrella, staring at me as if I were a stranger from a high society magazine. "Jen," he rasped, his voice rough and dry. I stopped, keeping my distance, my expression calm and polite. "Mark." He looked at my emerald suit, my styled hair, the radiant confidence in my posture, and the bouquet of flowers in my arms. He looked like a man who had stumbled upon a treasure he had thrown into the dirt, only to find someone else had polished it into a diamond. "I read your book," Mark whispered, his fingers tightening on the umbrella handle until his knuckles turned white. Chapter 4. The character based on me. "You called him a parasite who feeds on light, because he has none of his own." "It was a fictional story, Mark," I said softly. "It wasn't fiction," he yelled suddenly, his voice cracking, stepping closer. "You wrote about the paper stars. You wrote about the library. You wrote about the bridal shop. Everyone at my firm knows it's me, Jen. They look at me like I'm a monster." "You weren't a monster, Mark," I corrected him gently, looking directly into his frantic eyes. "You were just a small, insecure man who thought tearing down the woman who loved him would make him tall." Mark flinched as if struck by a physical blow. He took a staggering step back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. I came to tell you I'm sorry," he choked out, the words sounding foreign and twisted coming from his lips. "I was wrong, Jen. I shouldn't have deleted your files. I shouldn't have said those things in the shop. Please come back. I'll let you write. I'll even let you keep your pink decorations. Just come back home. My life is a mess without you." I looked at him, the golden boy who had once been my whole world, the boy whose praise I had spent 10 years starving for. And I realized, with absolute, unshakable certainty, that his praise meant nothing to me anymore. His criticism meant nothing. His presence meant nothing. He was no longer my nightmare. He was just a ghost standing in the rain. "I have a home, Mark," I said, my voice smooth, warm, and entirely free. "And it's full of color." Ashley's yellow hatchback pulled up to the curb, honking twice. I walked past Mark, stepping into the warm rain under my own umbrella. I didn't look back as I opened the passenger door, slid into the seat, and pulled the door shut. "Who was that?" Ashley asked, glancing in the rearview mirror as she pulled away from the curb. "Some fan?" I looked out the window at the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, bright, vibrant, and endless. "Nobody," I smiled, leaning back against the seat, clutching my bouquet of lilies. "Just someone I used to know." A year later, I bought a small, Victorian-style house on a sunlit corner street near the park. The house had a wraparound porch painted soft cream, large bay windows that let in the morning light, and a backyard filled with blooming hydrangeas and yellow roses. My study was located on the 2nd floor. It was painted a soft, blush pink, filled with crowded bookshelves, a plush velvet sofa, a desk overflowing with colorful notebooks, and a collection of Raggedy Ann dolls sitting on the windowsill. On the wall above my desk hung a framed photograph from the launch of my second novel, a photo of Ashley, my mother, and me, all laughing under a banner of yellow balloons. Every morning at 7 o'clock, I would sit at my desk with a steaming mug of tea, open my laptop, and write. I didn't write to prove I was smart. I didn't write to win awards or impress a golden boy. I wrote because my heart was full, because my voice was mine, and because I had finally learned that the only person whose approval I needed to live a beautiful, extraordinary life was the woman sitting in the chair